everything that could have gone right for Mahayuti went right, and everything that could have gone wrong for the Mahavikas Agadi went wrong. Many leaders within Mahavikas Agadi thought that they have an edge, and so they were also playing a game ahead, which is in case Mahagadi wins, who's going to become the CM. BJP seems to have learned from the setback it received in 2024. Arrogant in terms of how many seats they are going to win and getting
की
complacent.
बात 400 पार.
Aam Aadmi Party is a formidable player. They do well against BJP in Vidhan Sabha. And BJP needs to figure out a way to win these voters.
Hello and welcome to The Federal. You're watching Off the Beaten Track, a program in which we discuss something really the nitty-gritty of it. We've recently had assembly elections in Maharashtra and Jharkhand. The elections were the verdict was in fact quite surprising, because till the time the voting was on and the campaigning was going on, everybody was saying that it is a very tight contest. Eventually, on the 23rd of November, it turned out that it was actually a two-third majority in Maharashtra for the Mahayuti and also in Jharkhand for the India bloc of parties. It's also been seen as a verdict which is likely to change the political course of the country. Various questions have arisen after this verdict, which we will be talking about. And I'm joined today by Rahul Verma, who is a very well-known political scientist, somebody who's also with the Center for Policy Research and also associated with the Ashoka University. Welcome to the program, Rahul. It's a pleasure to speak to you once again, especially exchanging notes on politics and elections is something which I really cherish having with you.
Thank you so much for having me again. Thank you again.
So let's begin with the most obvious questions. The Maharashtra verdict. It is obviously a very one-sided affair, completely different from the tally what was there in the Lok Sabha verdict. 31-17 in favor of the MVA in the Lok Sabha elections, including the one independent, the rebel candidate who was there from Sangli, who later on again said that I am coming back to the Congress. And now, which is completely different. Let us first try to look at the macro picture. What do you think are the major factors that went into giving this kind of a verdict?
48 hours within sort of like a landslide victory, which no one had expected. Any attempt to basically come up with what led to this victory would be sort of like foolish on my part to even try that. I don't want to pretend that I know what happened in Maharashtra. But let me sort of like outline few things, what might have went right for Mahayuti in this election. First, I think the seat count of Lok Sabha gave a very different picture than what actually had happened. In Maharashtra alone, it was a 31-17 in seat terms, but the vote share difference was very minor. Both the alliance were pitched within less than 1 percentage point. Both had 43 point something in Lok Sabha. So the expectation of this assembly election going to be a tighter race was not unfounded, given what had happened in Lok Sabha. And two, I think because, in last 5 years of Maharashtra politics, parties have been split. And so it would have been difficult to figure out. I think a lot of people thought that perhaps some welfare schemes like Ladki Behna and Eknath Shinde in some ways gaining traction as a pan-Maharashtra leader rather than just a leader of Thane and adjoining districts, had given sort of like Mahayuti some advantage. But because there was sort of like rural distress, which many people have highlighted, especially soybean farmers and onion farmers were complaining, Maratha youth are agitating for reservation. I think given those factors, the expectation was of a very, very close context. Now, if I have to summarize and in a jest, I think what happened in Maharashtra is that everything that could have gone right for Mahayuti went right, and everything
Right.
that could have gone wrong for the Mahavikas Agadi went wrong. So let's sort of like start thinking about some of those factors. I think MVA in that sense had a difficult time from Lok Sabha election till this election in figuring out the seat sharing arrangements and which party is going to contest how many seats. There were trouble till the last moment. Two, I think this trouble also got accentuated because many leaders within Maha Vikas Agadi thought that they have an edge. And so they were
Hmm.
also playing a game ahead, which is in case Maha Agadi wins, who's going to become the CM? So,
Right.
first, I think there was this kind of bickering within the organization and lesser coordination, which happens in all parties and all alliances, but this was there for everyone to see. Second, I think there's no denial that Mahayuti had greater advantage at incumbent in terms of like announcing welfare schemes and making sure that the benefits of those welfare schemes reaches to people. But also, given that the party BJP is in power at the center, is in power at the state, it also has more resources in terms of money to be able to
Hmm.
spend on the ground and in terms of campaigning. So I think they also
Right.
had resource advantage. Third, I think, which is important to remember, that BJP seems to have learned from the setback it received in 2024. Uh, how many changes they have made at the top, that's a different matter. But I think they have realized that perhaps getting ahead of the voters, being sort of like, arrogant in terms of how many seats they are going to win and getting
अब की
complacent
बार 400 पार.
might have hurt them. So, in that sense, I think the ground game is much better. There is much more coordination than what was there in 2024.
Two more things which I want to ask you very specifically because I felt that and I want to get your opinion on it. One is a greater majoritarian thrust, which actually started from the end of October when the RSS, after its meeting of its Kendriya decision making body, the Mandal Karyakari Mandal in Mathura, they said that what Mr. Yogi Adityanath said in the context of Bangladesh, that katenge to batenge to katenge. That was the exact slogan. If we get divided, we'll get slaughtered. And secondly, even during the campaign, that slogan was taken forward, and even Mr. Modi and other BJP leaders also said that if we are together, we are safe. That was the exact slogan which was actually used by people. So there was a very direct form of majoritarian campaigning that we saw, which obviously led to an increased kind of a pushback against the MVA because of greater amount of what they called Muslim consolidation behind the MVA parties. That was point number one. I want your viewpoint on that. And the second is what we call the RSS factor, that in the Lok Sabha elections, it was fairly palpable that the RSS was not campaigning against the BJP, but it was kind of indifferent, especially after Mr. JP Nadda made that statement that we are now, more, competent. Competent was not the exact word. Saksham is the word which he actually used in Hindi, that we are more capable now, which really seemed to have hurt the RSS, besides the fact that they were completely in disagreement with the complete personalization of the campaign by Mr. Modi, to what you hinted, that Modi ki guarantee and ab ki baar 400 par, which they really felt, in private conversations with RSS leaders, felt that it was really uncalled for. Do you think that, the second question is there, do you think that the RSS wanted to convey that, look, where are you without us and where you will be with us?
Okay,
Please.
which one do you want me to answer
Well,
first?
well, obviously, we will start with the majoritarian one because
Okay,
I think, that's a more macro issue.
sure.
RSS is, a lot of it depends on what we have perceived, what we have spoken to in private conversations with various people. So a lot of it is unearthing which is not in the public domain.
Sure. So let me start with the first one, and on the second one, I would also
Yeah.
like to hear your views since you've been writing on RSS for so many years, so you know more than me on that
No, no,
thing
it's
for
not,
sure.
it's not,
Uh,
not
so, so
knowing
let's
more.
start with the first one. I think the key question on the majoritarian campaign is to figure out whether that's part of BJP's foregrounding of election campaign or in background. Because
Hmm.
BJP continues to mobilize on religious issues in every election. Even in this round of election, this seemed to have not worked in the same way in Jharkhand. They lost
Hmm.
in Jharkhand, right? So same kind of campaign narrative, same slogans were used, and in Jharkhand, the mobilization was also happening on illegal immigrants, largely hinting at sort of like Bangladeshi Muslims, right? So, in some ways, I think religious mobilization is part of BJP's narrative. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. To me, any narrative, whether it's on religious issues, a social justice issue, or anything, it alone can't catapult a party to win an election, and it
Hmm.
cannot catapult you to win a three-fourth majority like this. I
Right.
think this was definitely part of election campaign in Maharashtra for sure. There's no doubt about it. It is also true that even when BJP got a setback in 2024 election, long-term opinion polling data indicates that majoritarianism as a sentiment continues to be present in Indian society, and there is no sort of like decline in those numbers. It's stable. It's sort of like if it's uh, going in any direction, it's going up. To me, I don't think like. So BJP used this campaign, and perhaps in Maharashtra it might have worked in its favor because it was also able to cite certain examples, such as the Lok Sabha constituency of Dhule, where in Dhule, BJP candidate, I think, led in 5 assembly segments of Lok Sabha, but lost because of another one assembly segment. I think it's Dhule city,
Hmm.
where 70 to 80% of the population is Muslims, and it voted on the side of MVA candidate, and MVA candidate eventually emerged victorious.
It's a victorious. Hmm.
Related to, I think, so majoritarian politics is going to have resonance in spaces where it hasn't yet shaped politics so far. So perhaps in northern India, its resonance might have peaked or is there. But in sort of like states like Maharashtra and in southern India, coastal India, I think there is going to be some resonance of this politics for time to come. So it played a role. There is no denial
Hmm.
about it. I think on the second question, which is also interesting, the way you put it, which is about RSS not getting not getting active during
Right.
2024 and perhaps after 2024 elections, both in Haryana as well as in
As well as Maharashtra
Maharashtra.
and Jharkhand also.
But again, see, even
Hmm.
their presence in Jharkhand, where
Couldn't
they
help.
have been active in mobilizing sort of like tribal communities for decades, was not able to help BJP to win,
That's
right?
right.
So each of these factors works in sort of like conjunction with other factors and leads to one kind of outcome, which is victory or other kind of outcome. So to me, the way I would read the RSS sort of like mobilizational effort in Lok Sabha versus Vidhan Sabha is that in Lok Sabha, BJP sort of like got complacent or arrogant, and they thought their own machinery, their own sort of like magic leadership or resources would be enough to mobilize on the ground. And I think some of the like statements which came out after the Lok Sabha elections here and there in newspapers, that RSS leadership on the ground said we were never asked to campaign, right? Or no
Hmm.
one approached the local level
Yes.
BJP leaders did not approach us in that way. I think post 2024, that sort of like course correction has
Has been
happened,
done.
like I think there is more active participation of RSS on the ground.
You were talking about the majoritarian narrative and the fact that you also referred to Jharkhand. Even in Jharkhand, where the charge from the BJP was handed over to somebody who's actually known for an extreme Hindutva position, that is the Assam Chief Minister, Himanta Biswa Sarma, and actually he came and actually threw a very odd ball in Jharkhand polity, which is that the demographic character of Jharkhand has altered greatly because the government there has encouraged infiltrators from Bangladesh to come and settle there.
Hmm.
What happened was that, along with this kind of a campaign, plus the fact that you had a fairly smart chief minister in Hemant Soren, who not just thinks from his heart the way his father Shibu Soren used to do it, because of several decades of a campaign for the Jharkhand state, which kind of made him a very romantic and an idealistic kind of a political leader. Whereas Hemant Soren, in the period that we have seen, is a much more nitty gritty, nuts and bolt, a pragmatic political leader. So he was able to utilize this, introduction of this narrative, that the infiltrators, along with, mind you, just the way Shinde brought in an economic, factor, give a large amount of largesse to women. There was a similar scheme which was started by Hemant Soren after he took charge of the chief ministership once again, giving to women 1,000 rupees each, with the promise that from December it's going to be enhanced to 2,500 rupees. So obviously, this coupled with the fact that it kind of created a sense that the BJP was anti-tribal, anti-minority, which created a huge back, along with the women who are 85% of the seats. They are more than the men voters. So it kind of created a problem. So I just put these, just to lay the backdrop. But what I'm really interested in is, you talked about majoritarianism, and that the various surveys which have been done even during the non-election period, the regular ones. I think that you are obviously referring to the CS surveys. Uh, there were states, having reported on the Ayodhya agitation, the Ram Janmabhoomi agitation from the 1980s onwards. We used to initially say that there are certain pockets in North India, which is the part of the Hindi belt, the Bimaru stretch of states, where Hindutva or Ram Mandir does not resonate the way it does in UP or in Bihar at that time. It used to, but even in Bihar, there was a level at which there was a checks and balances were there. There were states like Rajasthan where Hindutva was said to be not a place, because there was total, symbiotic relationship between the two communities, the Hindus and the Muslims. But Rajasthan has also seen kind of changed in the last few years, though although Hindutva, the level of acceptance is probably not as high as it is in Uttar Pradesh. You use the word that it has reached a peak or something like that, basically to saying that the Hindutva sentiment has reached a peak. On this particular point, I have a certain, bone to pick against you, because, as reporters, we have heard from the 1980s that the BJP has peaked. It's not going to go beyond this. I remember, some very important leaders of civil society, and even my seniors in the professions, very senior editors, would actually tell reporters like me that you people are reacting too much. There is a certain level beyond which BJP can't rise, because Indians are inherently secular. After seeing all these things, do you think that this inherent secularism is something that which those who believe in the composite culture of this country can actually still have faith in, that we are inherently secular?
So, no, I am not making the point of India being inherently secular
Hmm.
in that sense. I think if I use the word peak, then it was a wrong usage of the term.
Okay.
In some ways, perhaps the right word might be plateaued,
Okay.
or the other
It is
word which
still plateaued for the moment,
for the
Yeah.
moment. And so the other word which I think Suhas Palchikar used much before Lok Sabha elections, which I really liked, what I think his argument was that in North India, there is some level of fatigue that has developed with Hindutva, but there is going to be fascination with in the newer territories where BJP is going to enter. So fatigue versus fascination kind of binary, which is not to say that it can't rise more than this. It's just that because Hindutva was sort of like used as a mobilization tool so much in North for last 5 7 years, it does not have sort of like capacity to add new votes in the near future. Can new narratives around Hindutva in North be developed 5 10 years later and it can bring new voters? Yes, for sure. But see, presence of Yogi Adityanath and this kind of like mobilization has been happening in North since 2014 2017, right? So if not 2014, at least UP 2017 election. So whatever it had to deliver in that sense has done its role in last 7 8 years. So it has plateaued for time being. Whereas the newer territories, such as sort of like Telangana, or even I would say in Tamil Nadu or Maharashtra, where BJP is still sort of like expanding, there is going to be more fascination with the majoritarian politics. So that's, I think, the point that and I agree with you. One can never say about any political mobilization or any sort of like ideological issue that this is where the peak is. You can't even do that for markets as well. Right? Peak and bottom is hard to measure.
I'll just, add something. You said about, me having written on the RSS. There was just one little point which I made, when I was updating the biography of Mr. Modi, which I wrote many years ago. In fact, 2013 is when it was published. One point which became very evident is that at some point after the demolition of the Babri Masjid, the leaders of the BJP thought that in Indian politics, the political theater, you cannot enter from the right flank. You have to enter from the center. I'm just being very figurative.
Yeah.
Mr. Vajpayee, during the NDA government, no 370, no uniform civil code, no Ram Mandir. After the fall of the of the NDA government in 2004, Mr. Vajpayee attributed to not taking action after the Gujarat riots, basically continuing with Narendra Modi. Mr. Advani going to Pakistan and finding secular virtues in M.A. Jinnah, all those kind of things. But I have argued that Mr. Modi remained steadfast that this is something which is actually there in society. Somebody has to just go and possibly give it
Hmm.
political correctness, and that is what he gave. And
Hmm.
that is
Hmm.
why you have a far greater amount of people who now openly say those things, even within the upper middle class, within the fairly civil society sections also. People in the media are much more outspoken. Yes, suddenly we are speaking in the third person. We hear constantly. Just this afternoon, somebody was saying that whenever I travel through Bengal, I constantly hear, they are coming, they are coming. When I ask them, who are they just smile and say, well, you should know it.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
I'm not saying that this is the overbearing thought in various states, but there is a greater amount of otherization which is there. So I just wanted to add this to our conversation. There was one point which you said that we possibly, or rather, the analysts or the people on the other side, were unnecessarily overjoyed by what the verdict was in Maharashtra. And not just Maharashtra, maybe other states also, Uttar Pradesh, for instance. By-elections have happened. Samajwadi Party has conceded three of the state seats that it had held at that time. So the BJP is once again back as strongly as it was during the in the by-elections to the 9 seats which were there this time. Also, the Lok Sabha verdict which was there. Do you think that actually just the fact that numerically the BJP was down to 240 without really much of a reduction in its vote share was possibly misread, and the kind of, it was an exuberance that the BJP does not have a majority, which kind of lulled the adversaries of the BJP into some kind of a complacency. It happened in Haryana and it happened once again in Maharashtra. Jharkhand it did not have, because you had a very canny, Hemant Joshi and the Hemant Soren as chief minister, and also it's a different, socially a different state.
So let me start with I see. I think by-elections, like last 50 years of data indicate that incumbent state governments are likely to do well in by-elections. So I don't want to read too much into
Right.
by-elections. But whether political parties are sort of like getting ahead of themselves, getting overconfident of a state where they think uh, victory is just around the corner. And one reading, it seems to be that for last 1 year, this is what seems to be happening. Everyone thought that Congress is going to be able to save Chhattisgarh and win back
Mm.
Madhya Pradesh. They lost that.
Yeah.
Then the assumption was that BJP is going to improve on its majority in 2024. That
Mm.
didn't happen. Then the expectation was Haryana should be in Congress's back since BJP government in the state is not great. Uh, it like the opposite happened.
Mm.
Maharashtra, the expectation was that MVA will have an upper hand, and in Jharkhand, the expectation was that BJP will have an upper hand,
Mm.
right? And so, what seems to be happening that both parties or alliances maybe are sort of like thinking ahead of election results in that sense. BJP in Jharkhand thought that in 2019 they lost because they didn't had an understanding with all Jharkhand Students Union. They didn't had Babulal Marandi in the fold. And so while if they could get everyone along, they would be easily able to surpass Jharkhand Mukti Morcha alliance.
Mm.
Last time also, if these parties, just BJP and AJSU contesting together, they would have won the 2019 election. And so now BJP got Babulal Marandi plus AJSU plus even some tribal leaders like Champai Soren from JMM, and they thought all of this gets their social arithmetic right. I think social arithmetic alone is not going to win you election, and BJP should
Elections.
seriously introspect itself what happened in Jharkhand because it should
Mm.
hurt in some ways. Now, coming to the final point, did sort of like analyst and the Congress party and the that oppositional alliance uh,
Media
over
also.
the 2024 mandate? Yes, certainly so. I uh, uh, in like post-election results, they did act as if they have won the election, have defeated the BJP. And
Mm.
if you do more sort of like close analysis of election data, there is an element of fortuna, which is
Mm.
that the Congress won some elections, like lots of seats by close margin compared to BJP. They did better in areas where they had alliance. This is not to take anything away from the Congress and the opposition performance. And this is also not to say that there were narratives that took shape, such as Constitution khatre mein hai or reservation chala jayega. I think some of those narratives helped the opposition party, and BJP in some ways made many mistakes in the run up to 2024 election. And
Yes.
so at any point of time, like just looking at last 5 7 years of Indian election, Indian politics is very dynamic. There is
Mm.
nothing permanent in that sense. Every second year, third year, you will see some shift happening. There are always opening available. If you remember, like BJP won 2014 Lok Sabha election with a big bang, and then they lost Delhi in 2015, lost Bihar in 2015. The only election they then won was Assam 2016 and UP 2017. By the time you had Gujarat 2017, Congress gave it a scare, and you had
Yes.
Soot Boot Ki Sarkar and many of those things happening. So
Yes.
even when BJP won, there was so much sort of like traction for the opposition parties in 2017. So like between 2015 and 2017, 2018, and then like again in
Yes.
2018, the BJP had a setback in Maharashtra, setback in Rajasthan, setback in Chhattisgarh. And so like there is always going to be an opening for opposition parties. And when I'm saying opposition parties,
That's right.
opposition party, right? I
Yeah.
think BJP got a setback in 2024. Now they have used these two elections to get to buy them a little bit more time and relief. If they get complacent and don't win or challenge Aam Aadmi Party in Delhi, and then something happens in Bihar, and then they don't make headway in West Bengal, as everyone is expecting, then the momentum would have shifted against BJP then. But one fact is not going to change till the next Lok Sabha election happens, which is BJP is twice as large as of Congress, both in
That's
terms
right.
of share and seat share. That is a
Yeah.
big thing which opposition needs to realize.
Yeah, that's very important. There is also something which is there, which we have stopped actually speaking about. I remember that in the 90s, when the Indian democracy opened up and elections became much more competitive, became multipolar, we would often use hear people talk about India should be actually debating very seriously whether we should abandon this first past the post system and be a proportional elections. Should that be discussed and debated within the politics? We can actually keep on talking cite innumerable instances. Starting with Maharashtra, the BJP's vote share is 26.77. It is winning close to 50% of the seats. So you have had this innumerable instances can be found, where there is this always discrepancy between the total number of seats won and the vote share. You also have mentioned some of it, that in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, they were actually not a 17 to 31 kind of a proportion as far as the vote share was concerned. Do you think that India should debate that option also, a proportional system of elections?
Oh, absolutely. I think, see, the problem is that winners are not going to change the rules of the game through which they won, right? They are less likely to do unless there is an incentive for them to make those changes.
Right.
But I think the new delimitation is around the corner, and we need to start thinking about it. The problem is when we start these debates, we start is either or kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
So if we have FPTP, should we scrap it and get proportional representation? I think there is going to be a lot more problem with that. I would rather propose, why not think of a model like Germany, where half of the seats are by
Exactly.
FPTP and half of the seats are by proportional representation. That's one way to begin thinking. Second, I think what we don't do, and this should happen not just for this kind of debate, but many policy ideas that we want to implement. India is like in Europe in terms of its sort of like size and population.
And
Rather than
diversity.
Yes, rather than thinking of pushing one policy across the country at one go, why not we say, okay, let's choose one third states or one fourth states by random, and we are going to implement this in these states for 5 7 years. If they start giving us positive results in aggregate, we are going to expand it across the country, right? I think unless we start using our states as laboratories for testing and trying policy ideas and then expanding, we will not be able to move forward on that front.
Very well put, that we need to experiment and not have a closed solution in mind, when we actually begin debating. Very well point taken. I hope that the people who will be deciding the course of this country over the next few years, especially through the very critical delimitation years, already the leaders from the south have sounded alarms about their political clout getting diminished considerably because of performing better. I'm using it within quotes, performing better on the population control point. Last question to you: the roadmap ahead. It's a very lazy kind of a question, but very obvious also. Delhi is there within the next 2 months. Uh, September, October, November. That's a better time frame. Is Bihar. 2026 thereafter, again another bunch of very important elections. How does the roadmap look, especially Delhi? Given all that has happened, you have had the chief minister in jail for the last 6 months, for 6 months, or maybe even around even more. A new chief minister in place with a clear declaration that he is not going to resume being chief minister till exoneration comes from the courts, and that is not coming very soon. So Kejriwal is not going to be chief minister even if the Aam Aadmi Party gets a majority. That's a reasonable guess we can make. How does it all look to you? Can the BJP actually win Delhi once again after 1998 is the last time they had a power, they were in power? Sushma Swaraj at that point, such a tall leader, she was routed, in 1998.
So I think can BJP win Delhi? I don't know. The reason is this, because I think one, Aam Aadmi Party is a formidable player, and we have seen in last 10 years that while they underperform in Lok Sabha, they do well against BJP in Vidhan Sabha. So there seems to be a 15 to, so BJP is constant, like their lowest vote share in municipal, Vidhan Sabha and Lok Sabha, lowest is around 35-36% vote.
That's right.
And so I think BJP has this solid base of 35% vote, which jumps around 50% in Lok Sabha. Now, what BJP needs to figure out, this 15% vote share, which is not with them in Vidhan Sabha, and why it is not with them, right? I think there are many factors. BJP perhaps does
Yes.
not have a charismatic face like Arvind Kejriwal to match in the state level. I think the second thing is that Aam Aadmi Party has a very solid base in terms of like bottom half of the socio-economic pyramid, and BJP needs to figure out a way to win these voters. Now, here is the problem. I think about it. Last three elections, because Jammu Kashmir there was no incumbent, Haryana, Jharkhand, and Maharashtra. In all three places, the incumbent came back to power, right?
Mm.
And right now, one reading from Jharkhand and Maharashtra is that its welfare women-centric scheme led greater mobilization among women for the incumbent party.
Mm.
If the BJP is
True.
going to read that in Maharashtra they won because of Ladki Behna and lost Jharkhand because there was a Maya Samman Yojana from
Exactly.
JMM, then you would have a difficult point, right? Time to turn things around, because AAP is seen as welfareist and has much more
Yes.
sort of like presence there. So I think any party more than analysts needs to now sit seriously at the drawing board and figure out the change sort of like political electoral arithmetic post 2024. And why I'm saying this, one thing which we have not noticed, it happened in 2024 also in these assembly elections, is that the parties which are not part of these two big alliances are getting squeezed in terms of seats and vote share. Let me take you back to 2024. AIDMK, BRS, BJD, AIUDF, BSP, Shiromani Akali Dal,
Mm.
INLP, all these parties were squeezed in Lok Sabha because they were not part of these two
That's
alliances.
right.
And it's also is happening now. So it also depends in Delhi whether Congress as a third alternative will get votes or not. Because
Right.
if there is a third party which comes into the play, then I think seat conversion is going to be very, very different.
Very
Uh,
difficult to actually assess prior to that. And Bihar, I know it's still very a lot of time, and if we actually can make fun, we really do not know
no,
which
no, no,
side
no,
of the fence Nitish
no, of
Kumar
course,
is going to be.
I think, see, uh, like who wins is perhaps not
Yeah,
the question that you
exactly.
are
That's
asking.
not the right question.
Yeah, but in the run up to Bihar, like in 2020, RJD came very close to winning the election,
That's
and they
right.
lost the election in some ways. Like there were three phases of election. In the first phase of the election, RJD alliance was ahead. In the second phase, it became neck and neck, and in the third phase, the BJP and JDU alliance passed ahead of them. And there were many reasons,
Yes,
AMIM and
yes,
BJP getting.
various factors.
But one thing after the election, what was clear, that in Bihar, Congress contested 70 seats and only won 19 seats out of that.
Right.
Like their strike rate was just 27-28%, whereas both RJD strike rate and left party strike rate was more than 55%. So I think one thing, like given that now Congress has lost both Haryana and Maharashtra, its own ability to negotiate with these regional players, both in Delhi if it wants to align, in Bihar if it wants to align, has diminished substantially. And
That's right.
I think BJP, JDU, and LJP has a wider social coalition, and
Mm.
that's why they were also able to keep things in check during 2024. In UP, BJP lost a segment of Dalit vote, perhaps because they didn't have LJP-like party in UP, or it also lost a section of OBC vote. So, which is what they have in form of JDU in Bihar. So, I think BJP, JDU, LJP, and some coalition is a wider social arithmetic coalition. RJD, when you go to Bihar, you will think that RJD is in a much stronger wicket because there are two large communities, Yadavs
Right.
and Muslims, who are going to be with RJD. And so there is going to be much more noise in their favor. And that's
Yes.
also seems to be RJD's glass ceiling. I think RJD needs to figure out how it goes beyond this bigger
Exactly.
community, because they're like that's their challenge. Because these two communities are going to be there. There is all like you like during the campaign trail, it would seem like RJD is on the comeback trail, but you will have those smaller communities which JDU, HAM, LJP mobilize, and all of them are going to
And which are
stay.
also silent during campaigning because of the exuberance with which the supporters of the RJT come across during campaign.
True. So I think going forward, I think the roadmap for RJD is going to be what kind of alliance they are going to stitch, and how they are going to go beyond these two large communities. What is that they have to offer? I think last time they had the employment sort of like scheme in mind, and that
Right.
generated a lot of enthusiasm, but also like Nitish Kumar's popularity at that time had hit rock bottom. Whether there is any improvement on it or not, we don't know, but he has been there for a long period of time. And so Nitish may also have some emotional cards on his sleeves in
Right.
6 months to come.
Right. No, very well explained, and we will keep on coming back to you every few months to seek your help to navigate us through the electoral and the political, narrative of India and what is really how things have developed and what is likely to come. You have done a very fine job today, and we have been able to understand the Lok Sabha elections better, and certainly the Maharashtra and Jharkhand. We could have talked for much longer than, but then there is a certain constraint of time, and we shouldn't bore our audience also beyond a certain
Yes,
point. Thank
that's
you very
much.
much, Rahul.